Got it.
Under the R.
Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Randy, I'm hoping you're looking at my graphic.
I am.
For those who don't know, I'm Teddy, and the guy with the uberly shiny top to his head. Sorry, Malcolm, I had to pull you into that. That's my buddy Randy. Our special guest today is Malcolm Macdougall. Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy through all of 2022 has been sponsored by the Elder Law Firm. We're grateful for the Elder Law Firm spending the year with us. They have been a great partner. And if you have a need for a conversation about estate planning or elder care planning, you need to reach out to the Elder Law Firm and have a conversation with them. 336-396-4551, and let them know that Randy said that you should give them a call. So
absolutely.
Cool. I think I pulled that off right, Randy. Did we get it done?
Yeah, and I'm all set on this end. So you introduce yourself and
Yeah, for those who've never met me, we got 9,000 people in the audience already. I'm Teddy. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. Teach people how to use LinkedIn as a business tool. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting out of the Winston-Salem, North by Golly, Carolina space. We help corporations and individuals who are in business and or in career transition who want to get value out of that business tool. But every week on Wednesdays, me and my buddy Randy get together. Randy, would you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Happy to. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, based in Winston-Salem. But you know, our Goodwill is a 31 county Goodwill, Teddy. We extend everywhere from Forsyth County, north and west throughout the state of North Carolina. So we've helped lots of folks. And if you happen to be watching, or you know somebody, if not yourself, you know somebody else that might be thinking about, hey, you know what, come first of the year, I'm going to look for another job. Well, have them reach out to me. We're free, happy to help. I run our professional center, and we work by appointment. But a couple of times a week, we get together, Teddy and I do. And on Monday, we have a little fun show, a little tip, a little story, but the big shoe is on a Wednesday, and Malcolm Macdougall returns. We'll get to Malcolm in the topic here in just a moment. But if you have comments or questions for Malcolm today, put them in the chat. Teddy will keep an eye on that, work those in. Yeah, where possible. But Malcolm has been on the show. You were on here a year or so ago, maybe a couple of years back. And we did Clifton Strengths, and we talked through that and how we can make that work for us in building teams and how we can add value. But Malcolm is back. He's a chief solutions engineer with OPT, that's Organizational Performance Training Group. And just as a means of kind of a quick overview, we've all been part of difficult discussions, whether as a manager or as a team member on the receiving end. And so much is written and talked about to help managers do a better job of conducting these difficult conversations on performance and development and so forth. And while that'll be part of what we'll cover today, what's interesting, at least to me anyway, now is Malcolm's going to focus a good bit on you as a team contributor, as you know, not the manager, but as one of the, you know, the team members, and what you can do to help those difficult discussions be a little bit more productive and a little less difficult. So, Malcolm, why don't you introduce yourself in a little more detail, and we'll get started.
Yeah, sure. I had a 34-year career with Sarah Lee and Hanesbrands. I finished that career in 2019. My basic role was in the supply chain, director of global planning at the end of my career. In 2019, I decided to leave the company and start my own consulting firm around performance and engagement. During those last few years that I worked for Hanesbrands, I realized that's really where my passion was. I think the company recognized it, and we parted ways on very good terms, and I've done some work for them. So that's where I'm at right now, enjoying this second career. Not looking for retirement, as we were discussing pre-show, not even considering that. I'd like to stay busy. So that's where I'm at, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. And you know, just to be clear, during a 34-year career, you're going to have some difficult conversations.
Sure.
Some of those might have included laying off some really good employees. Some of them would have been around talking with people that had behavior issues, not performance issues as much as truly behavior issues. and then conversations with difficult people trying to accomplish things. But as Randy said today, we're really going to talk about difficult performance conversations and really removing the difficult from those conversations.
And if you happen to be watching it, I know at some point here, Teddy is going to we're going to have a couple, 3 slides today. And so we'll have them on the screen, but also I think Teddy is going to have them in the chat area in the notes and maybe even as a follow-up. And we can, if you're watching, you can use those as a guide if you would like to try to implement some of what Malcolm's talking about. But Malcolm, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you the why question. I ask that of every guest. The passion for what you do. You've embarked on this career, so obviously, this is something that you've given thought to, and I know you love it. But was there a point during your career or several instances where you kind of said, you know what, I think I'd like to try this, and there you are. Now you're doing it. So, what's your why?
Yeah, but when I look back over my career, I can see several places where I was really touching it into that area of performance and engagement, but it never really dawned on me at those times. Then in 2018, 2019, I faced a challenge of taking on a new team that had lost a lot of morale. They had lost half of the workforce as we had transitioned part of the work content to the region. And I needed to get that team back on track. And I needed each person to really contribute and be involved. And then it dawned on me that I didn't need to really worry about the technical things that we needed to do. I knew what technical things needed to happen. I realized what I needed to do was help each person on that team have a career like mine, purposeful and fulfilling. And I knew if I did that, they would take care of the rest. And for the next couple of years, that's what I focused on doing. And I realized what I really liked doing was helping people have not just a great career, but have an excellent life. And I think having a great career, having a great job is a pretty big foundational piece to having an excellent life. So that's when I really got excited, was helping people have that better life.
I think you're fortunate too, and maybe I'm off base here, but I mean, your manager had to allow you that latitude to pivot that and have that trust that you've built up over the years. So absent that, you'd have been having difficult conversations about you.
Yeah, it was great during that last year in particular, as we really started focusing in, and they said, well, you're really doing in a way you're doing HR work. Yep, yeah, I am. And so they gave me that latitude. The last 3 months I was there, they completely cut me free to do this engagement work and performance work. And my manager was fantastic. At the very end, we had a conversation. He said, well, this has been great, Malcolm, but we have a new opportunity for you. And I looked at him, I said, stop right there. What do you mean? I don't want any other opportunities. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to do it in a broader audience. And he looked at me and he said, all right, well, I'll go talk to HR and see what we can do. And yeah, we want to help you be successful. You're obviously passionate about it. So you're right, Randy. With that, I was very fortunate over those last couple of years to have a manager who believed in me.
Yeah, and that's part of the not the mystery, but the piece of this is, it takes two to play. And so we're gonna talk. Let's dive in now. And again, if you have comments or questions for Malcolm, put them in the chat. Teddy will keep an eye on that. And let's get her started. But the first point you had mentioned was the scope of the difficult conversations, both performance and development conversation. When you talk about the scope, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think you set it up really nicely at the very beginning when you said, our conversation's really going to be around those difficult performance conversations. It's not about the disciplinary conversations or the layoff conversations. We're going to really talk about performance and development conversations. And those can be difficult because quite often it means that someone is performing at a low or a below acceptable rate of performance. And that conversation has to be had. And I think, as you mentioned, most of the literature that you'll read about it, most of the things you'll see really come at it from the manager's perspective. How can you handle these conversations? How can you avoid these conversations, right? And to be very clear, our goal isn't to avoid performance and development conversations. It's to make sure that they're not difficult, that they're productive.
Okay, so
and I think, you know, Teddy, if you could bring up slide number 1, and Randy, you and I can just sort of take a look at slide number 1, and it's a slide from Gallup Corporation. Gallup does a really great job with developing managers. They have a manager development portal. There's some other great organizations out there. Ted Blanchard's organization, the 1 Minute Manager author, who went on to create a great process with managers. But here, just looking at this Gallup slide, it's talking about the 5 conversations that drive performance. And it starts with a role and relationship orientation. You know, what is my job? What are the expectations? It moves through things like quick connect, check-in, gets to development coaching, and then progress. So I think, Randy, you've probably seen a number of presentations and articles that sort of talk about these type of conversations. And for us today, I'm really going to sort of focus in a little bit on conversation number 1 and conversation number 4, the roles and relationships, and then the development. But I'm going to do it in a way that comes at it from the individual contributor's point of view, from the team member's point of view, rather than just completely from the manager's point of view.
Good. So
that's great, Teddy. That's all we needed there.
Okay.
When I get my voice back, I'm going to drop this whole slide deck in chat for people to get a hold of.
Perfect.
Now, did you want to work through the different steps here, or did you want to table that?
Yeah, we can just table that slide. I just wanted to sort of show people the type of information that they're able to get and that they've obviously probably seen in the past. And I think Gallup is a great organization to work with on engagement and performance. So this is just a great simple slide that they'll share with clients.
Yeah, and I think communication is a challenge, certainly in life in general, but one of the biggest challenges that we face in business is the communication and the conveying of deliverables, expectations, and getting acknowledgement and buy-in from the recipient that, yes, I hear it, yes, I understand, yes, I'm good with it. And so when we can set those clear expectations, then I think that can help give us a roadmap. So we're going to talk more about that, but it's a shared responsibility. And you want to speak to that, about it being a shared responsibility with the team member that can help make it more effective than from the top down, but also from bottom up?
Yep. So yeah, so that's you're setting this conversation up perfectly, Randy. So
tell Teddy I deserve a raise this year.
Teddy said that I was going to be coaching you. No, this is a shared conversation too. But you're absolutely right. The culprit for most of these performance discussions is around poor communication or unclear objectives, unclear expectations. And for me, what I want to do is I never want to let someone control my development. I never want to let someone control, to take away my control of my performance. I want to be a part of it. So I think today, one of the key messages that I want to get across is we want to help team members have a voice in what their job is and a voice in what their development plan is. And I have to be careful because I'll go into a client and we'll start having these conversations and have some workshops, and people get super excited, super enthusiastic.
Sure.
Oh, this is I get to have a voice now, and I have to caution them, and I quickly do caution them. Yes, we're going to make sure that you have a voice, but don't confuse that for a vote. A business is not a democracy, right? The manager, the leaders, the managers, they're still in charge, and they'll have to make decisions. But we can ensure that you have a voice. And I think that is a lot of what people are looking for. I just finished reading a book by Daniel Pink. The book is Drive. And that book, he does a really great job talking about how people want autonomy, they want mastery, and they want purpose. And he describes it this way: the secret to high performance and satisfaction at work, school, and home is the deeply human need to direct our own lives, to learn and create new things, and to do better by ourselves and our world. And I think Pink really, it's a great book. It's a fun read.
Yeah.
And I think he's really hitting at some important things. People they want autonomy. And I think in a work environment, that begins with having a voice. It doesn't mean you get to make all the decisions. Hopefully you work for a manager that gives you some leeway, like my managers did, and let me try some new things that they didn't come up with themselves. But at least having a voice is a good first start.
And Malcolm, that whole model, and I love Daniel Pink's stuff. It's good stuff. And then there are a lot of people who write content that, that is bouncing back and forth through Daniel Pink's mind and Dale Carnegie's mind. All these people are really smart people. The one thing that and when I used to manage people, I always wanted them to be at the table and share ideas that can help us influence the right decisions. One of the biggest challenges is that people would come to the table and their voice was so slanted towards them and their own desire and not about business, that it really distracted a lot of managers, myself included in some respects, that I really didn't want your voice at the table anymore because it really didn't add value.
Yeah, I got a sports analogy for you guys, and I've used this many times with folks I've talked to over the years. Think about a football huddle, and we're all in the huddle, and the wide receiver says, "Man, I'm open, man. Throw me the ball. Throw me the ball." And the other guy says, "No, I can beat this guy. I can beat him deep." Running back says, "Man, I can blow through that line. Give me the ball. Give me the ball." And so you hear all this chirping in the huddle, and the quarterback finally hears enough, and he says, "All right, guys, this is the play." And whether it came in from the coach or back in the old days, a quarterback called it. Point is, when you break from the huddle, everybody should be on the same page. Yeah. There should be clear communication, and we're working as a team. But yes, there is that time and a place. And while you don't get the vote, at least you can help plant the seed in the leader's mind that says, maybe we ought to think about this. This could benefit us. But when we break the huddle, you better be on the same page. Otherwise, your quarterback's going to get killed. So that's a little sports analogy for anybody that's been watching bowl games and ready for the NFL on Sunday.
I love it. And if you want a book that goes along with that, it would probably be Patrick Lencioni's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Okay.
We have a discussion and then we go to commitment, right? We commit to it. It's not consensus, it's commitment.
Yeah.
But Teddy, I do want to come back around to your point. One of the things as we go through this conversation, and it will probably occur about halfway through, we'll be making the point that everything we do, everything we talk about a business, it really needs to take the business's needs be business centric, focused on the business.
Yeah.
So when people come to you and they want development, I really don't want to hear the conversation, well, I just want to be promoted, or I think it's time for me to get a raise, right? Well, let's talk about what the business needs first. How is what you want, how does it tie back to the business? And it really has to tie in before I can really take it seriously. But so great point, Teddy, and I think we'll come back to that again in the this conversation today.
Good, because Randy needs to hear this, but go ahead.
Perfect.
There's a lot we could cover. So Malcolm, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to circle back on, and things we've talked already. We've got a handful of talking points that we do want to get to at some point, but this clear communication, I think that's one of the main ones.
And clear communication, and you made another really good one. It's a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
That the manager and the team members share a responsibility to perform well together.
I think Peter Drucker is somebody that you wanted to reference. And, look, I mean, feedback hurts sometimes. I mean, it can. And so maybe you can talk about effective ways to provide feedback that aren't soul crushing, but are upbuilding, or, building people up and encouraging versus demoralizing. Because I think we've all had, at some point in our life, we've all had that scenario where it just feels like they just sap the strength right out of you. And that's sad, because it didn't have to be that way. So let's talk about how we can have that objective feedback.
Yep. So I think you just answered your own question, and I love it. So
that'll be a politician, right?
It has to be objective.
Right.
The feedback has to be objective. And as we go through the discussion, I'm going to show the team member how to start that conversation. And we're going to start it in a very unusual place. We're going to start it with what they're doing during their 40 hours a week. What are their tasks? And I'm going to show the people that are discussing this with us today, well, okay, you're going to show us a different way to look at this. Yes, we're going to actually frame this discussion up around Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of urgency and importance. And, in his book, First Things First, Covey really popularized that idea of a 4-quadrant analysis, and things are urgent or not urgent, important or not important. So we're really going to use that framework to allow the team member to start from an objective point to share with the manager.
You want to dive into that now, or
where
are you on this thing?
Let's put up slide number 2. We'll talk about slide number 2, which is the 4 quadrants of urgency and importance. We'll take a few minutes on that. Then I know Teddy's going to want to take a quick break in the middle here. I think the timing is working out pretty good. Teddy, I think I've got my timing down pretty good today.
I'm glad to see you practice to do this, Malcolm.
Yeah. So I think everybody probably recognizes Covey's 4 quadrants of urgency and importance. In quadrant 1, it's urgent and important. This typically is tactical work, things that have to get done, recurring work content that brings value, deadline-driven projects, meetings that generate value, things like that. In quadrant number 2, we're swinging over towards strategic work that doesn't have to be done today, but if it's not done, our future may not be too bright. So it's really about preparing for the future. Down on quadrant 3, you have distractions. I really like to focus on quadrant 3 around rework. A lot of times people get confused. They realize it's important that they do the work, but they also realize they're doing it a second time, either because the process broke down for them or someone else didn't do the job that led up to their work correctly. So rework is really critical to understand. It has to be done. It's urgent, but it doesn't bring the value it would have brought if we did the work correctly the first time. And then you move over into, quadrant, that should be quadrant 4 there. Don't circle the 3, Teddy. That'll make me look bad. And so quadrant 4 is really the unnecessary things, the busy work. So if you think about an organization and you think about an individual team member, maybe even that frontline supervisor, manager person, they're going to spend about 80% of their day, their week, working in quadrant 1, doing tactical things that have to be done. And unfortunately, those tasks are going to bleed down from quadrant 1 into quadrant 3 because of that rework and that firefighting. But in total, they're going to probably be spending about 80% of their work here. Mm-hmm. On the other side, if you're up in the C-suite, if you're up in that high rarefied air, then you're probably spending 80% of your time doing strategic work. You're looking for ways to increase capability of the organization, capacity of the organization, trying to recognize new opportunities. Now, I also put some things in here that everybody, no matter where you are in the organization, whether you're at the C-suite or the grassroots level, you can be doing things like relationship building, personal, professional development. You can be participating or even leading team building. So there are things that every person does that can fit into quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is when you're improving your job, when you're making your job better than it was yesterday to meet the needs of the business of the future. But our leaders should be here in quadrant 2 80% of the time. And Randy, I love Peter Drucker, so I'm going to hit on him. So Peter Drucker, business guru, professor, led the business school out west. He was a coach to some executives. And when he coached an executive, the first thing he would do is ask the executive to write down all the things they did, sort of like trying to, where do you spend your time? Mm-hmm. And what he found was most executives would all of them would write down, I spend my time recognizing opportunities, creating strategies, looking into the marketplace, figuring out what strategies we need, building the relationships that the company needs to have, things like that. When he challenged the leader to take notes for the next 2 weeks to see what the leader really did, many leaders weren't spending as much time in quadrant 2 as they thought they were. They were spending a lot of time in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3 doing firefighting. So the point that I want to make there is that no matter where you are in the organization, whether you're up in the C-suite or you're at the grassroots level where the rubber really meets the road, if we don't intentionally know what we're doing and how we're spending our time, we can't possibly make progress in making things better.
So how much time and energy do you suggest that folks devote to journaling and keeping an eye on where their minutes are spent?
Yep. So I think you need to be reflective of this, and some people can sit down and reflect in an hour or so. But what most people that I work with want to do is they want to journal for about a week or two. I haven't really had anybody say they needed more than 2 weeks, but many people wanted up to 2 weeks to journal. And then they felt that they would be able to make that list of what they were doing, how they were spending their time.
Now we're getting close time-wise. Teddy, you want to take the halfway break now or take a break? Cat got his tongue. Malcolm.
I'll wrap it up with this statement.
Speechless.
Yeah, I apologize. The button somebody fell into the button. Malcolm, I did this probably about 15 years ago. And one of the ways I found it made it really easy for me to journal was not to have something else to write in, not to have, a clipboard. Like one guy wanted me to have a clipboard, but I put it on my Google Calendar. On my calendar. I looked at my calendar, and every time I made a transition, I wrote down, I'm working on this. I wrote down, I'm working on this. And it made a mess of my calendar, but it showed me over a 2-week period what I was working on, what I shouldn't have been working on, how much time I invested in some of those tasks. And I also got to look and see what kind of rewards I got from that. So give me a minute. We're on lunch conversations with Randy and Teddy. conversation today with our special guest, Malcolm Macdougall. And Lunch Conversations, this is our last sponsorship with the Elder Law Firm. They hung with us throughout 2022. We're grateful for all they've done for us. If you have a need for help or guidance or coaching or any help in estate planning or elder care planning, for those that you are responsible or you feel obligated to help, reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, 336-396-4551, or just Google the Elder Law Firm and hunt them down through the internet. So back to you, Randy and Malcolm.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you, Teddy. Yeah, I've got to wonder. So if I'm a worker bee, right? I'm not in the C-suite. I'm not in the management level, and so I'm spending, I guess, most of my time in quadrant one, trying to keep the alligators at bay. So let's say my boss just says, keep doing what you're doing, and really frowns on. And I'm not saying this is the case at where I'm now. This is not goodwill at all. This is just, I'm making this up. But I do know people who, if it looks like they have time to think about their career development, that means they're not busy enough, and they just throw more work on them. And, that leads to burnout and a whole host of things. But do you find that management, is there an effective way to approach management to say, hey, can we carve out a little extra time to work on some other things? How is that going to lay? How do you lay that out? How does that conversation take place? And again, this was not anything goodwill. I love what I'm doing. So trust me, it's a good gig. But how do you address that if you're a worker?
Yep. So that's a great question. The first thing that I want to say is that the first thing you bring up isn't your development. It's your performance. You actually start with what that manager has to be interested in, your performance. And that's where, when I was going through my last couple of years at Hanesbrands and I was facing that challenge with that team, I knew that I needed the team to be engaged. I knew that I needed them to really, want to be there. And you think of all the things that drive engagement. And personal development is one of those things that really helps drive engagement for a person. They feel like I'm learning something at my job.
Sure.
People care about me at my job. My manager can, right? Well, I didn't have time for that. The business that I had taken over was on fire. I needed performance. And here's what's funny. When you start to talk about performance and you talk about it objectively, and you convey to the people, I want you to be successful. You're needed. You can contribute even more than you're contributing right now. Their ears perk up a little bit. And people don't go to work. I used to ask a really bad question, Randy. What's the number one reason why you go to work?
To make my boss look good.
So you're independently wealthy. You don't need that.
Absolutely. Teddy doesn't pay me a dime, and I just dig, what, I'll make him look good. That's a full-time job, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, with Teddy, absolutely, with Teddy. Yeah, I meant, why do you go to work at your real? So I would ask that question, and most people would look at me and say, I need the paycheck.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So we're going to play Family Feud. What are the top two reasons why people go to work? Number one, paycheck.
Ask the audience, pull our audience in on this conversation.
Yeah.
Why do you go to work? Is that the question, Malcolm?
Yep. What are the top two reasons why you go to work? What's the number one reason? What's the number two reason? Because it was a horrible question to ask, just what's the top reason?
Yeah. What's number two, number three?
What's number two and number three? Because most of us work, most of us need that paycheck. We're not independently wealthy.
Yeah. Well, Burriss over there, he's a different story. But you do want to feel as though what you do matters. And that's one of the things I dig about goodwill is, I can go down the street and, sell cars, or I can do whatever, you could have other jobs and they could bring in money. But at the end of the day, at least for me anyway, I look at it and I say, hey, did I make a difference in somebody's life? Does what I do matter? Do I have some level of latitude at work to make things happen the way that they need to get done. And I don't have, somebody over me constantly kind of a thing. They trust me. And for all of those things, and there may be 2 or 3 thrown in there, but those are things that I like.
Look what, can you see the responses, Malcolm?
I did. I was
Yeah.
seeing things like, I saw legacy.
Yeah, that's from Dale. By the way, that's from a guy whose very first response to you was money, money.
Yep.
And then he hit legacy.
Yep.
Exactly. So this is, and I saw a contribution making a difference.
Yep.
So this is, and if we went back to Daniel Pink in his book Drive, which is really not about money being the driver, it's the other things that drive you, right? The intrinsic things, not the extrinsic things.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found was people want to make a contribution. They want to be successful. They want to help their teammates. As I listened to it, it wasn't about, some people said, I'd like to get promoted. Yeah, you want to contribute. You want to move up. Got it. It's about being successful. It goes back to people want to make a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
No one said, I come to work as my number 2 reason to be developed. Nope, I want to be developed, but I come to contribute. And I think what we do in most companies is we beat that out of people. They come ready to deliver, and we put so many rules on them. We put so many constraints on them. We don't give them the tools and the training they need, and pretty soon we've beaten it out of them. So what we want to do, what we're going to do is we're going to focus our conversation on performance first, not just because it's what the manager wants. I really think everybody wants to contribute and perform better.
Yep, absolutely. So, let's dive into that. Is there another slide you want to have up, or how are we going to tackle this performance discussion?
So let's do this. Bring up, Teddy, if you would, bring up slide number 4. And this will be what a completed 4 quadrants might look like. And this example that I'm showing is for a planner, someone who plans production.
You got it? Can you see it?
I can see it.
Yeah, I see it too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So someone filled out their 4 quadrants, and they did the best they could. Now, so importantly, the question that I asked the person to do, I did not ask them for a job description. That's the wrong question. And Teddy, you really helped illustrate this. Where do you spend your time? If you need to journal it, journal it. What I really want to know is where you spend your time and how you think about that time. You're the expert. You're the subject matter expert of what you do 40 hours a week, not your manager, not anybody else. You're the expert. What are you doing? And in this case, the person filled out their 4 quadrants. You can see up in the quadrant 1, 10 hours a week, completing loading work orders by Wednesday at noon. Not a lot of detail, but enough to say, this is how many hours I'm spending. This is what I'm doing. This is my task. So the person filled it out, and then I sat down with the person. I was the person's manager, and we started looking at areas. Well, let's take a look at 3 things. Are there things that you think you should stop doing? Simple. Should we stop doing it and free that time up? Are there things that you're doing that you think somebody else should be doing? I'm doing somebody else's job. Great. We're gonna circle those. We're gonna put a circle around those. And finally, are there things you're doing that you think should take you less time? That for some reason they're inefficient because the process, the systems don't work well, or other people aren't feeding me the information in a way that is good for me, right? Maybe we can make some changes to the workflow. So when we look at this, I quickly look, the person quickly looks down at quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. These are, you notice I switched it from important, not important to low value and high value.
Yeah.
I do find that sometimes people struggle with that concept of not important, but I have to do it. It must be important. Well, do you think it's bringing value? So
Good point.
sometimes switching that makes it helps the person. So in this case, we looked at low value. I look at the one 2 hours working expedites in a manual way. The person recognized they were doing work very manually and thought, well, maybe we could improve that. Maybe we could automate it a little bit. So so this is a great example. And this is where the conversation is with the manager. So, all right, what can we do about that? Well, maybe we could do pivot tables. I see what you're doing here, but pivot tables, Excel pivot tables would be great. And the person, the team member gets a sad look on his or her face. I don't know how to do pivot tables.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. If this is being done, if you're working with a manager who's open or who's even excellent, but just open, oh, well, we could, why don't we put pivot tables on your development plan? I'm hoping that a person has a development plan, and I'm hoping they have a goals plan, a deliverables plan. I hope companies provide those documents and help drive that. But let's put it on your development plan that you're going to learn how to use pivot tables over the next month. Here's who you can work with. This person's very good at it. Let's contact that person, get you a couple hours of training. Once you've had that training, then I want you to give me a deliverable. I want you to automate, semi-automate this expedite process. So now, by looking at what this person does every day, all of a sudden, it's become very easy to come up with a development item and to come up with a deliverable. Now, once we take a look, there's some other things on here about doing things in a manual way, needing more Excel training. Great. So we got that Excel training. We're going to free up about 4 or 5 hours almost immediately. Well, in the next 1 or 2 months after training is done and after the person has improved their job by automating it through Excel, we have freed up about 5 hours of time. Well, what are we going to do with that time? Oh, if I'm a manager who has received the right level of strategic information coming down, then I can say, I've got a project for you.
Yeah. You know, Malcolm, that's probably another one of those areas that's problematic in business. And I would wager both you and Randy and our audience has seen this, is that we train people to be more efficient. We give them better tools, and then we fail to take and get value from that time savings. And then what ends up happening, tell me if this is what you see, is that they end up in, you know, Q3 and quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, or maybe a whole lot in quadrant 4. How do you see that happening?
Well, I'll tell you a very experience that I had when I first did this exercise at Hanesbrands. It was just a test, a pilot.
Yeah.
I brought in the 23 people who reported to me, 3 managers and 20 direct reports that reported to the manager.
Yeah.
I had them do this exercise. I told them, I'm going to make you angry and I'm going to make you scared. Whatever, Malcolm. Okay. I'm eating my piece of pizza. Go ahead, Malcolm. All right. Until you prove to me differently. Now, this was my team who had lost 50% of their people in the past year.
Yeah.
Until you prove to me differently, I said, I'm going to assume you are no more than 75% loaded, maybe as little as 50%. Their faces turned as red as beets. They were angry.
Yeah.
They started immediately talking, you're crazy. I said, okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to cross out everything that you don't think is important on your sheet. They didn't do. I said, no, literally, I want you to cross it out of your paper. Oh, okay. I want you to circle everything you think is somebody else's job. They didn't, their pencils didn't move. I said, Sarah, you know 25% of what you're doing belongs to some, circle it. Yep. And then everybody started circling. Then we said, put a square around the things you think you can do better. Now, add up how many hours are left.
Mhm.
And almost to a person, Teddy, each person physically picked up their piece of paper and turned it over because now they're afraid they're going to get laid off. So you, as a leadership group, as the manager, the directors, the communication has to be so good from the top down that there is a need, a business need that is not being met. And people get very excited. They say they're too busy, they're loaded up until you show them the kind of exciting work
They
that
could be
needs
doing.
to be done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm with
Then
you.
they have time.
And I think that you didn't tell the story as probably as clearly as you actually said it out loud to this group. You said words to the effect, I'm gonna make you upset and I'm gonna make you scared. But I bet you there was another part to that conversation that says when we get done, X will be beneficial for all of us.
You are correct, Teddy. I told
Yeah.
them right at the very beginning, I need every one of you. I need all of you. But I am
Except
for that person who came in late.
All right, whose phone just went off? All right, did I get that? All right, so hey, there are three more. Did I say three more talking points here that I'll throw them out. And if you want to, we've got 15, 10, 12, whatever minutes left. So one is you said, hey, let's get away from annual reviews, have them to be maybe a little more frequent. So that's one. You want to speak to that briefly? Anything?
Yeah, I think, when we put the Gallup slide up at the beginning, it really points out that these conversations don't just happen once a year. They happen throughout the year. Typically, I had my conversations with my team members once a month, but a lot of people like to do once a quarter. I think it shouldn't be less than once a quarter, and doing it more than once a month is probably a little taxing too.
Yep. So that might fall under the not needed category.
Exactly.
Once a month. Oh no, here comes Malcolm.
Good one.
You want to meet again? Come on, I got work to do, right?
Yep.
So, here's one. What can team members do to own and drive their performance and development discussions? And you kind of touched on that, but anything else you'd like to share with that?
So literally, when I work with clients, what I did at Hanesbrands, I personally never scheduled a development conversation, a performance conversation. I scheduled them with my manager.
Right.
But everybody had to schedule, each team member was responsible for scheduling that monthly meeting or that quarterly meeting. Take ownership. Let's start out with a simple thing. You schedule the meeting, put it on the calendar, make it formal with your manager. Teddy,
that not only does that make more sense for them to do that in general, but it also shows that I own the growth that I want to create.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not waiting for you to tell me what you think I need to do. Look, ask Randy, he'll know. We're peers. I'm not, I jokingly refer to him as my boss, and he accepts that, but he knows daggone well just as much as I know what I need to do this show better. And if I know it, then I should take accountability for making it happen.
Yeah.
When
I wonder if sometimes, we're just afraid of hearing things. And so, silence, just kind of keep your head down kind of thing as a worker, and just again, hope I don't get laid off kind of a thing, and just don't tick anybody off, and just kind of keep quiet and do my thing. My guess is that we've seen so much change in the workplace about quality of life, wanting to work remotely, better working conditions, however defined. I'm wondering if you think that maybe workers are more apt to show initiative and speak up versus back in the old days where, just keep your head down, keep doing a good job, and then, 40 years later, you get your watch.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear, and You mentioned something. So Randy, you mentioned something. Now I'm going to bring it full circle from the very beginning.
All right.
You talked about communication top down,
Mhm.
and Peter Drucker talks about communication when you're managing by objectives top down. But what most people don't recognize, Drucker continues to go on to say, just as critical as top-down communication is, bottoms-up communication is, because we need to complete the feedback loop.
Yeah.
So typically, a strategy might be sell more at executive level, sell more, spend less, generate cash. As that gets cascaded down through the VPs, the directors, the senior manager, it should be disaggregated. It should be detailed out what will happen.
Mhm.
But really, the message that finally gets down to the team member is sell more, spend less, generate cash, and maybe a little bit of detail. And we expect the manager and the team member to do what with that, other than do what they do every single day. No change. Let's do it, right? You mentioned, and so one of the quotes that I really love is by George Bernard Shaw. The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by creating your 4 quadrants, you're removing the illusion.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. I think this is important. I think this is not important. Please tell me, is this correct?
Yeah.
You find some.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Randy. I'll come back to Dale in a minute.
Just sometimes the boss doesn't know the details of your job in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's where the quadrant stuff comes in, because they may not know what you do
Correct.
day to day. Yeah.
And it's 2023 nearly. And there's this new phrase out called, this new phenomenon that is not freaking new at all, called quiet quitting.
Yep.
We just gave it a new label. But what Randy said, those are keeping their head down in this environment. They're keeping their head down because they're quiet quitting. What do you think, Malcolm?
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot written about that quiet quitting, and this is why I love to do the 4 quadrants. I don't like just working with the manager, and a lot of organizations want to train the manager only. No, I want to get. If you train your managers, you're dealing with maybe 15% of your workforce, 15% of your minds. I want to get 100% of my minds working on the company's challenges. Yeah. And that takes everybody.
Hey, I just want to jump in, and Teddy, you can keep an eye on this as well. Excellent discussion. We still have a little bit more we want to cover, but if somebody wants to follow up with Malcolm or get more information or more resources, or just kind of carry this conversation on to Malcolm, what suggestions would you have for that?
Yeah, certainly. They could reach out to me through my website and contact me in that way. And I think Teddy and you will be making sure that's available to them.
Already did.
Contact me through that. That would be great. And Randy, you and I talked about some of the talking points, and one of the ones I did want to make sure I got in was the potholes that you have to watch.
Potholes in the wintertime, especially up in Maine where you were. I bet you get your fair share of potholes come springtime.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I do want to take a moment, creating your 4 quadrants as an individual team member, as an individual contributor. Doing that puts you in a vulnerable position.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to know whether your boss is going to be open to receiving this or not. And I would say, and Gallup would say, about 80% of managers will be open, and about 20% will berate you because you don't know that this is important. You think this is not important. You don't know what you're doing. So I do want to. I want to put my little caveat out, like we're doing stock market trading, right? This is
okay.
Right. Don't just take this advice blindly.
Called Teddy. Teddy put you up to it, right? Teddy put you up to it.
So I do want to say that. I do want to say you need to, 80% of managers are probably going to be a little bit, some of them be a little surprised. It will take them a little bit of time to realize what you've done, and they'll probably be very open to it. On the flip side, we do have some managers, we got managers out there, and there's going to be some managers that say, oh, this is pretty cool. I want to have all of my people do this. Okay, there are more nuances and potholes than we have time to talk about here. If you're a manager and you seriously want to consider doing 4 quadrants for your whole team, I love it. Contact me through my website. I will talk with you for an hour, nothing, no charge, free, to give you guidance, to hear how you think you'd like to do it, to give you guidance on pitfalls to watch out for. Because I would love to see managers successfully do this and share that information back with me so I can include it in the book I'll be writing in 2023.
Yeah. Cool.
How about that? Good deal. Malcolm Macdougall, thank you for joining us today. One last tip you want to throw out there? One takeaway that you feel kind of rises above others?
Yeah, I think it's important that we recognize that people need a voice. And I think as an individual contributor or team member, you have to take control. You have to insert your voice. You have to empower yourself to lead this process. As a manager, you really need to give your people a voice, help them have that voice. It's not a vote, it's a voice.
Yeah, big difference. So
yeah,
Malcolm, this is good stuff. Really, I look forward to seeing the Amazon and Kindle link to your book in 2023. So good stuff. Hey, Randy, who's coming up next week, buddy?
Tom Hayes, somebody that Malcolm knows well.
And speaking of books, I saw Malcolm's mugshot.
Yes, he was in it.
In that book. I'm like, what? And I didn't know you two were connected. I'm like, what the hell did we do here? Good stuff. It was a good segment that you were in. Yeah,
we'll have Tom on next week. But hey, quick story for you, Teddy, just real quick, not a whole lot, but just, as I look back on my career, I don't know, what, 10, 20, career. 15, 30, 40, I don't know, whatever, how many years, you look back on good managers that you've had, and you look back on ones that you kind of shake your head and you go, well, I survived that, but I learned something. And I guess that's what I want to say is that I say this a lot, life's a journey, and we do learn as we go, and we hopefully don't keep making those same mistakes over and over again. But a great conversation today. It's one of those things that, I just want people to get along, be productive, be happy, and be, again, everything, breaking that huddle, and we're all on the same page.
That's right.
I think this helps us a lot to understand each other and how workers and management can work together, really, to, kind of craft things in a way that needs to be done. So that's it on my end. Teddy, next week I've got, you have a quick story? You got anything real quick?
I do have a quick story.
Right.
Yeah, we got Tom Hayes next week. Yep. It's the conversation is going to be do not lead by example. I promise you it'll be a good chat. Randy and Tom will have that conversation. I'll show up just to bring the good looks. Hey, look, Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy for 2022 has been sponsored in part by the Elder Law Firm. This is their last show with us. Really appreciate them being a part of the show. Again, if you need elder care or estate planning help, reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina. Randy and I do have some plans in place for our 2023 sponsor. We also are building a community through Patreon. If you would like to be one of our sponsors as our audience sponsorness, we'd love to have that. Check us out on the website. And we look forward to seeing everybody next year as we do continue doing Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy for you, and bringing fabulous special guests like Malcolm Macdougall and Tom Hayes to the show. Everybody have a great New Year. Stay safe. Remember, keep sharing the apple pie. Malcolm, see you later. Randy, I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye,
have a good
everybody.
one. Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate it.